Joining us now for more on the bipartisan gun framework in the Senate and day 2 of the historic January 6 hearings is Democratic Representative Jim Himes of Connecticut. Congressman, thank you so much for joining us tonight. Let's begin with today's hearing. Was there anything at all that you heard that really surprised you?
Well, two things, Lindsay. Number one, the attack on these hearings are that it's just fake news and this is just the Democrats, not being fair. What we heard, as we heard in the last hearing, was from lots of Trump people. From the Attorney General, Bill Barr. We heard from Jared Kushner. We heard from Trump's campaign manager, all of whom are saying exactly the same thing, which is that we told President Trump that he lost the race. And the reason I tell you that that's important is because one of the real weaknesses we have in this country is the fact that, according to polling, something like 60% of Republicans continue to believe that the election was not a fair one. And that's something that needs to change. The other thing that really struck me was, so why? Why, if Donald Trump has been told by all of his own people that he lost the election, why does he do this? And we got a little hint today when we learned that maybe it had something to do with the $250 million that his campaign was able to raise through just, 8, 9, 10 fundraisers a day, propagating this big lie, telling Americans that their democracy had been stolen from them, even though they knew that that was not true.
And you've said that you didn't appreciate just how violent the day had gotten until the Capitol Police started moving furniture from the 1800s in front of a door. And despite the billions of dollars that the U.S. spends on defense, you ultimately had to rely on an antique desk to protect you. 18 months later, how concerned are you that history might repeat itself again?
I don't worry too much about another January 6th. Again, it was shameful enough that it happened. And as long as we have the instinct that led to January 6th, as long as the ex-president is in Mar-a-Lago saying that this is all, a fraud, that this is, somehow a figment of the Democrats' imagination, despite the fact that all of his own people are testifying that they told him that he had lost the election, that could mean we go through this in 2024. Will it take exactly the same form it took on January 6th? Probably not. But that's still a terribly dangerous thing out there.
And you were, of course, a leader of the House Intelligence Committee's efforts during the first impeachment of former President Trump. You and fellow Democrats methodically laid out your case, yet President Trump did not face consequences then. Any concern that the same could happen with these hearings ultimately?
Well, I certainly hear from a lot of my constituents a real hunger for accountability. Lots and lots of people who broke into this building are going to jail, folks that broke windows. I got an up-close and personal look at them on January 6th. These were folks who really believed that their democracy had been stolen. But what about the people like President Trump, like Rudy Giuliani, like so many of the people around the president that propagated that lie? And, we're having this debate about whether laws were broken. If trying to stop the peaceful transition of power in the United States for the first time in its 2.5 centuries isn't a crime, we've got a problem.
Something I thought that was really interesting that we learned in the first hearing from Republican Liz Cheney was that Republicans in Congress appealed to the White House for pardons. Do you feel now, Congressman, that those members of Congress should be named by the committee so that the American public knows?
They absolutely should be. Look, our system relies on transparency. Our system relies on people like me going every 2 years to our voters and saying, I'd like my job back, please, right? And in the service of that, people need to know. If you did feel that you needed to request a pardon, why was that? What was the consciousness of guilt that led you to believe that you had to get a pardon? But yes, of course, if the committee has that evidence and that evidence is compelling, it needs to be made public.
The consciousness of guilt. That's an interesting way to put it. So lastly, your district is adjacent to the site of the Sandy Hook massacre. You said moments of silence after shootings now just make your head explode. After hearing about the bipartisan framework deal in the Senate, do you feel that this time actually is different? Do you think that this framework becomes the first meaningful gun legislation in decades, or is it still not enough?
Well, it's definitely not enough. I mean, we know that in this country there are probably 10 things: universal background check, raising the age at which an American can buy an assault rifle. There's lots of things that are not getting done here. And you're right. I mean, as somebody who lives really close by Sandy Hook Elementary School, it's painful to see what we count as progress. But you know what? It's progress. This is the first time in 3 decades, in 30 years, that the federal government has been able to advance. Getting something is worthy of celebration. And when the consequences of doing nothing is more dead Americans, again, I would have liked to have seen a lot more in this deal, but I'm going to celebrate the passage of this deal when that happens.
All right, Representative Jim Himes, we thank you so much for your time. I appreciate you joining us tonight.
Thank you.
Hi, everyone. George Stephanopoulos here. Thanks for checking out the ABC News YouTube channel. If you'd like to get more videos, show highlights, and watch live event coverage, click on the right over here to subscribe to our channel. And don't forget to download the ABC News app for breaking news alerts. Thanks for watching.